this Strat in for a change of hardware, which we've already done. And now let's get these frets polished up, shall we? Fretwork on a guitar is what makes a good guitar great. You can take a low-end instrument and you can give it the full fretwork and it will feel like, you know, it's £1,000 guitar, simply because you've put the time and care in to make the frets as good as they can possibly be. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is check the frets for how level they are, and to do that we need a fret rocker and a notch straight edge. Straight edge goes over the frets onto the fretboard, and we check to see that the fretboard's level. And it's a Fender guitar, so it needs a 3/16 Allen key. Right, so we go that way and get a little bit of forward bow and a little bit of back bow, so we know the truss rod is working correctly. And I'm just checking along the straight edge for any slight gaps, and that is looking good. So now we know the fretboard is flat and the truss rod is in neutral. We'll check along the frets. To do that, use a fret rocker and put it on the frets and see if it rocks. You'll hear if it does, because it'll tap, so you'll get that noise. But these are okay. Just go all the way along the fretboard, all the way across the frets, and we're just making sure that they're level in relation to each other. One thing I've noticed is if I run my fingertips along the ends, the edges of the fretboard, I can feel the edge on every fret all the way up and down, which doesn't feel very comfortable or nice when you're playing. So the first thing we'll do is we will get a fine file, and I'm going to round the ends over just enough so it takes the edge off and it will feel a lot more comfortable. I've got two files I mainly use for doing this, both from Crimson, their fret end dressing files. I've got one regular and one really fine. Now literally all you need to do is get the file and just literally go around the edge of the fret. Doesn't need a lot, just a few passes. That's all it needs. Now this file has got safe edges on both sides. This side is flat and this one has got a round. Now when you've used the flat side, you flip it over and use the round, and you do exactly the same thing, but you're just going over the edge of the fret, so you're rounding it off. And because of the safe edge, you're not damaging the fretboard. And straight away, the difference between the first and second frets is very marked. Now once you've done that with the medium file, use the extra fine file just to give it a little bit of a polish. So just repeat exactly the same process. And we do that for every single fret on both sides. Right, so the fret ends are all rounded off and smoothed down. So the next thing we're going to be doing is starting to polish up the frets. Now you can see where the wear marks are on some of these. Now, there's a little bit of pit in there. It's not really severe enough to warrant going for recrowning or anything like that yet. So I'm going to go over them with some abrasive cloth and then some fret rubbers. Now, to start with, I'm going to protect the fretboard with one of these. Just using a little piece of masking tape just to help hold the protector down. So I'm going to start off with a bit of abrasive pad, and that will just clean the fret up. So just remove anything like accumulated gunk, you know, sweat or fret polish or anything like that. So you want to get it so it's got a uniform surface. Then go to a slightly finer one. And that continues cleaning and also gets rid of any marks from the other pad. And after that, we start going into the fret rubbers, and you just pass this along the fret and it'll start to polish it up as we go. You don't need to press really hard with this because the rubber compound is impregnated with abrasive. So what I'll do is I'll use each one on this first fret so you can see how it comes up. So that was the coarse. Now the medium. You can see that's starting to shine up really nicely. Now once you get to the medium, you don't need to worry about protecting the fretboard, especially with something like rosewood or ebony. So let's get you out of the way for a moment, because it'll help get rid of some of the surface gunk that you can see on the fretboard as well. And then it means you can get down to the corners of the fret. Again, don't press too hard, just pass it over the surface, and there you go. See, that's already quite shiny. Now, next is the fine. I'm not damaging the fretboard at all. It's just helping to cut through what's on the surface. And then last of all, we've got the superfine. So that's the superfine fret rubber. Now we're going along and repeating the process on every fret. So start with the protector, use the abrasive pads and the coarse fret rubber, and then just work up through the grits with the fret rubbers going along the edges of the frets that we've just rounded, and then back and forth across the top of each fret. And as you go through with each rubber, it just gets more and more shiny. Right, so we've got the frets polished up with the fret rubbers. Now we're going to get them as shiny as we can. So that's going to involve polishing compound and a Dremel with a polishing wheel. So we're at the stage now where we need to mask off the fretboard just to keep it clean. So getting some masking tape right up to the edge of the fret. And cut it to size and fold it over. And when you get to where your masking tape is wider than the fret, you can just give it a fold like that and keep it out of the way. So get your masking tape right up to the fret. Cut it to length. Peel some back up to the edge, and then you can fold it there out of the way. I used to use the scalpel to cut along the edge of the fret to trim it to size, but this is a lot easier. And then it's just a case of doing that all the way along the fretboard. This does look like a lot of faff and messing around, but generally I can tape off a whole fretboard in about 5 minutes. And obviously I've sped this up a lot just so you're not getting bored and watching me messing around with masking tape. But this is a much better way of doing it, and the masking tape will let you get a lot closer to the edges of the frets than a protector. So that's the fretboard masked off. Got a little bit around the neck joint just to protect the bodywork around there. And now we're going to use some polishing compounds and a Dremel with a polishing mop to get these frets super shiny. I've got a few different grades of polishing compound, and I'm going to apply it to the frets using this little leather strop that I made myself. So first things first, load the strop. I find this easier than using a cloth because the block keeps the strop above the level of the fretboard, and sometimes you get pools of compound where you don't want them. Because you don't need a great deal of this stuff at all. Right, okay, so we'll come back to that in a minute. Ear defenders on, because now going for the Dremel with a little polishing mop on the handy tool, and here we go. You have to make sure you don't keep the Dremel in one place for too long, because you don't want friction building up heat and loosening the fret in the slot. Then just back and forth across each fret, and as you go through the grits on the compound, it just gets more and more shiny. Right, to start cleaning the fretboard, I'm going to go at it with some rubbing alcohol first, just to help cut through whatever's there. So just put some on the cloth and rub down the fretboard, and straight away, I mean, some of that is the polish, but majority of it is years of accumulated gunk that seeped into the fingerboard. So next I'm going to go with some crimson cleaner. Now, this stuff is safe on, well, certainly everything that I've used it on so far. Not like the time I accidentally put acetone on a guitar because I thought it was a rubbing alcohol. Yeah, don't do that, because I spent the next several hours repolishing the guitar, where it started to melt the finish, which was embarrassing and very annoying. Right, so get in there with the cleaner. See, it evaporates quite quick, but not as fast as the alcohol. But it's still drying straight away, and that's looking a lot better. Final thing is to get some restorative oil into the fingerboard and bring that rosewood back to life. I like this crimson stuff because it's not made from nasty stuff, so it's not petroleum or diesel distillate or anything like that, so I know that it's not going to be affecting my skin or fingers or anything, because I suffer with quite dry skin on my hands, so anything that can affect that I try and avoid, because otherwise I'm going through moisturiser like crazy. So again, just get some on the cloth and apply liberally. Now, depending on how long it's been since your fretboard was treated, or even if it ever has been treated, it is going to absorb a certain amount of this stuff. So you apply it liberally along the fretboard and leave it for a moment, and then reapply where necessary until it's sitting on the surface, and then you just rub it back and dry, and then your fretboard is restored and protected for a while. But generally this you need to reapply this every few months, 3 to 6 months, I'd say. But I mean, if you want, you can do it every time you change strings if you want to. I mean, it will be quicker doing it that way because it will take less to apply. So I'll leave that for 5 minutes or so, reapply as necessary, and then we'll rub it back and dry it out. Right, so that's had a few minutes to settle in, and now it's all just sitting on top of the fingerboard. So all we do now is rub it back in and clean it off. And you can see the difference in that fingerboard. Now it's being treated and nourished. It's one of those little things, it just makes a difference, a very slight difference to the player, but it'll feel a bit softer, even though it's hardwood, obviously, because it's wood and it's rosewood. But it will feel a lot better under the fingers and a lot more comfortable to play, which is the whole point. Just some areas where it's soaked in, when you remove it from the surface, depending on the pores of the wood, some of it is going to rise back up. So you'll see little shiny patches start to appear again for the next few minutes. So, apologies for that. That's the train track that's a few hundred yards away. So as you see those little areas, just go back in with your cloth and dry it up. But that is about that. So you can stop now.
Oh.